Phoenix Down Radio is on the air.
Welcome everybody to Phoenix Down Radio. I'm your host Klaus Nightbringer. My lights didn't turn back on. Let's fix that. Joining me today is our resident librarian, Seyrr Timono. What's going on, buddy?
I don't have lights to worry about turning on or off, so apparently a bit smoother than you.
Yeah.
That said, I have also been
Whee!
immersed in library summer camp planning for the past several weeks. I keep waking up at 7 a.m. now, which is kind of a problem because I'm still going to bed at 2 a.m.
Well, go to bed earlier?
You'd think that would do it. It sounds so easy, and yet...
I swear, you're going to bed when I'm waking up, man.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's pretty messed up.
Yeah, good choices are not happening here. In about 3 more weeks, and then I am going to find the booziest mid-range hot spring spa I can and not leave the jacuzzi until it's time for a massage.
That sounds like fun.
Yes. Other than that, though, holding up all right somehow.
That's always a positive. I am, I've got 2 full weeks into my new job now. Everything's going pretty well there, so can't complain. Seems like it's been a lot longer, though. I mean, maybe just because I'm gelling really well with everybody. The position and it's what it entails are just coming natural to me, and it's just been really nice, so...
It is really weird. Like, when you start a new job, at first it's like, oh my gosh, everything's new. And then within the space of a week and a half or two, it becomes oh my gosh, I've been doing this for so long. And I have no idea why that switch flips so rapidly.
Yeah, it's like, I literally thought it was longer than that, but I had worked my first 2 days, and then we had our last show. So, I mean, been 2 quote-unquote full weeks. I mean, we had the 4th in there, so I mean, 1 day off of a full week, but still. Yeah. Oh. Man, it's crazy. But I will say it's nice not having to drive my vehicle or spend my money on gas. Well, right now I get reimbursed for the gas until I get my company card, which will be very, very nice. But aside from that, it's just been a lot of fun. And I went a little crazy on Prime Day. I don't know about the rest of you, but they had a massive sale, and I think it's still actually going on Dungeons and Dragons books.
Yeah, I can see what looks like an extremely tall stack of books behind you.
Yeah.
Is that like 15?
No, it's only
17?
No, there's only 12 books back there.
It looks like a bit more than that.
No, I have 2 that are still on the way.
Okay.
But I mean,
that is a very goodly number of D&D books. Well done.
Hey, I mean, you know, it's something fun. You know, my D&D group is talking about starting up a 5th edition campaign once our current one is completed. And I didn't have any of the books on that, and when a friend said, "Hey, they're all on sale right now," well, I jumped on it and got like $500 worth of books for like less than half that. So you can't complain about that. So those books
well done.
I mean, they're like $50 a piece for those books.
Yeah.
So
like, it's not quite as bad as getting into Warhammer, but D&D is not that cheap a hobby.
No, but it's a lot cheaper than Warhammer. Trust me, I have like
most things are cheaper than
Warhammer.
$4,000
or $5,000 in Warhammer.
Some drug habits are cheaper than Warhammer.
Warhammer is a drug habit. What are you talking about?
Fair.
But now with the advent of 3D printers, who needs to buy the minis? You can just print your own, right? Download your own army. Anything else go on since the last episode for you, sir?
I think I felt like I did something, but I honestly can't remember what. The days are kind of blurring together right now.
Yeah, I mean, we are kind of in the even though it's early, we're in the kind of the middle of summer type of feel, because I mean it's my god, it's been hot and humid, and thank God for air conditioning is all I have to say.
I forget if I mentioned it before, but Spender's raid group managed to clear P4S.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that last episode.
Okay, cool.
So, which is, I mean,
I forgot when. I'm not sure when it even happened anymore. It's like it has to have been reasonably recent, but last week, 2 weeks ago.
I forget these things.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, all I know is that in about a month we're going to be in patch 6.2, which will be nice. Yeah. Oh, I did also order a number of other soundtracks, so we've got those coming. I got Final Fantasy 13 on its way. I have 13.2 as well because I found a good deal on it, as well as I ordered Final Fantasy 15.
All right, so that's something.
Yeah, so we'll have
that's
those.
Something to look forward to for our soundtrack episodes.
Exactly. I mean, we're halfway through Final Fantasy 12 right now, so I mean, if I don't even have 13, so well, it should be here in time. Yeah. So we should be good there. So yeah, we'll keep going with those. And as always, thank you to our Patreon producers, Nicknar, Aurori, and Tibient. Let's go ahead and jump into some gaming community news. Starting with an interesting little bit of information I found out early this week, or maybe it was late last week, something like that. But there is going to be a new Crystalline Resonance piano concert series for Final Fantasy that is going to start touring early next year. I'm gonna put a link into the chat here for people if they want to see if this tour is going to be going through your area. To celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Final Fantasy series with majestic piano performance in perfect sync with impressive HD game footage projected onto a giant screen. They're going to be touring more than 45 cities. They are going to be in San Francisco, Seyrr, March 3rd at the Cowell Theater at Fort Mason Center for Arts and Culture. I don't know if you know where that is.
So the entire series is being put on by La Fée Sauvage. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
Wild Fairy,
the Wild Fairy would be the translation for that. It's a worldwide concert producer and promoter that focuses on orchestral music concerts for major anime, video games, and movies. Yep. I was looking through the licenses for various other concerts they've done in the past, and I've seen Final Fantasy, One Piece, Kingdom Hearts,
Harry Potter.
They were involved with stuff for concerts for Harry Potter, Frozen, Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars.
So yeah,
and we've got a truly international list of stops that they're making. Of course, some of the stuff that's closer to home for us, like in San Francisco for me. But I'm also seeing Brussels, Amsterdam, Toulouse, Munich, Budapest, Frankfurt, London, Singapore, Hong Kong, Melbourne, Sydney.
Yep.
This is going all over the world.
Yep. And tickets aren't that bad, starting at about $44 a piece. And if you go through them, the fees aren't terrible. I picked up a couple of tickets already. I think it ended up being like $52 after fees each. So hey,
piano concerts are always one of those things I feel like it's fun to like maybe dress up a little bit for.
I'll be in my Red Mage cosplay.
I mean, yes, also totally an option. Some of us like to be fancy. Hey, some of us like to be different fancy.
Come on, this is a very fancy looking cosplay. I mean, it's the
some of us are different fancy. It's fine.
But this is the correct fancy. Come on. But if for those of you who are local listening to the show, local to Minnesota, let me know if you're interested in going. We can maybe do a meetup before the show, like we've done for Distant Worlds and A New World. It's been a lot of fun to meet people, hang out, and enjoy the show. So yeah.
Anyone who's Bay Area local, I certainly wouldn't mind joining you all.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to get together and make a thing of it. So yeah. Seyrr, if you decide you end up wanting to go, we can try and set up something for Bay Area people as well.
Yeah. All right.
So go ahead and check that out. It looks to be a very good concert series. There's a couple of bits of Final Fantasy VII news. For those of you who have PlayStation Plus Extra and do not have the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade yet, it has been added to the list of games that you can play for free as a part of your subscription in July. It joins games like Stray, Marvel's Avengers, and a number of others as well. These games are going to be, you get to claim these games to use and play for as long as you have your subscription, I believe, unless they've changed that recently. But it should be, like I said, this includes, it's the PS5 version of the game plus the intermission expansion with Yuffie.
Good times with her. We also have a couple other notes on the various upcoming games. An article talking about some of the technical specifications for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where they mention, among other things, that it will be PS5 exclusive, as opposed to the previous installments, which were released for PS4 and PS5. This one will just be on PS5. One of the reasons they cited is the SSD drive on there and the access speed for that. With the larger open world content that they want to make, having those fast access times is something that's really critical to the experience they want to make, and they didn't feel that it would be feasible to have that on the PS4.
Yep. If they're going to be looking at implementing things like ray tracing, definitely will not be able to do something like that on PS4 hardware. But the PlayStation 5 gives them that opportunity to utilize the hardware to its fullest potential, as well as increase the speed of data loading, so that way you don't have as long of waits between scenes.
It is pretty amazing just how seamless some of this has become. I do remember a lot of the earlier generations of the PlayStation where like a 5 or 10 second loading time between areas was just something that everyone was used to and accepted and didn't question.
Mm-hmm. And those little loading screens and the little tip screens. I know that's a big, even with the original PS4, and then when the games were able to be played on the PS5, people, if somebody wanted to start a brand new game, they had these little tip screens built into it as part of the load time. But now they don't get those tips because it's loading so fast.
Yeah. Or some stuff with design that, for instance, starts preloading some bits of it before you, when it kind of can tell that you're getting near that area.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like a lot more of that predictive stuff.
But
yeah.
They would, but this would mean that potentially this game could eventually go to the Xbox Series X as well. That also has a high-speed SSD built into it as well. But for right now, the game appears to be PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah. Couple notes on other parts of the Final Fantasy VII universe. The Crisis Core remake story, they have confirmed, is going to be a reproduction of the original Crisis Core. They're not going to be adding or changing elements to try to align it with the FF7 remake story.
Which I'm actually glad to hear, because I never had a PSP and never was able to actually play the game.
Yeah.
So now that it's coming out for a number of different consoles, probably early 2023, I'm very glad to hear that I'll be able to experience it for the most part with the original story intact. The only changes being one thing that they mentioned, the Buster Sword design has changed. That will actually echo what is currently in Final Fantasy VII Remake and that series.
I feel like that's just more for the visual identity, given that this is what's been established with the newer systems.
Yep, versus I believe the old one was handed down from Angeal and had a little bit more of a gilded design at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a major thing, but I think it's kind of nice to see how it'll link. It actually more links Zack to Cloud at that point, which is kind of nice. Yeah.
They did confirm that there's going to be adjustments to the combat system, but they are leaving the story alone.
Yep. Yeah, the was Digital Mindwave system that they had within Crisis Core. It's going to remain, but they are tweaking it to make be a little bit easier to use.
Yeah. Without going too much into depth, the Digital Mindwave ended up having some plot importance, including at several key moments. There was just some absolutely gorgeous storytelling effects they got while using it. So it would be... I don't know how they would manage to recreate some of those story beats if they were to remove that system.
Yep. So I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad for the most part the story and gameplay are going to be very close to what the
I am
PSP.
cautiously optimistic.
Yep. I'm just happy to be able to play it without having to find an old PSP or, potentially break the law and emulate it. Because we here at Phoenix Sound Radio do not.
Don't make me make controversial statements about copyright law. You know I will.
I know you will. All right, and then in Final Fantasy XIV news, shortly after the release of patch 6.18, a free company on Balmung decided to do something very different to advertise an upcoming party that they're holding in game.
Free company parties are nothing new.
No.
I've seen several in various neighborhoods that I've been housing neighborhoods I've walked through, attended one or two. Stage Reborn shows were really great, but
yes. But how many of those parties actually went out and bought real life billboards?
Why? Like, do you know how much billboard advertising costs?
It depends on where it's at and how long it's up. I mean, it can range from a couple $100 a day to thousands of dollars. So we're not sure where these were exactly located because they came down very quick. Because not only did they purchase these billboards, they used Square Enix trademarked imagery. They used data mined assets as well as mods that all go against terms of service from Square Enix.
It takes a certain amount of guts and or foolhardiness to slap your blatant terms of service violations on a massive billboard. Like I remember seeing reports there were billboards in at least 4 or 5 different locations.
I
like
believe
not just
3 states.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just 2 states, Texas and California.
Yeah,
here,
2.
Well, let me
Houston, Austin, and 2 locations in California.
But fortunately, nobody involved was actually sued by Square Enix for that. But according to this article from Dexerto, they decided to go ahead and ban a few of the FC leaders for this stunt. I believe at this point it's a temporary ban.
Yeah. This, of course, is reports that we're getting from the players because Square Enix naturally does not comment on specific decisions of this sort. Like not today. So all of the information we're getting is from people who either were directly involved with it or know someone who was.
Yep. So I mean, so take all this information with a grain of salt, because it's all going to be, slanted and biased depending on who's telling the story. I do recall there were a number of people who were like interviewed about these things. It was just a whole debacle, but
yeah.
It really took some cojones to do that. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm like, good on you for taking, that on, but why?
And yeah, this is something where some of the reports coming in include members of the free company who are claiming that they did not even know that this was happening, that this was a decision made by some members that was not like shared out broadly. So lots of various claims and counterclaims going around. The entire thing's a mess. I do kind of like the idea of an event in a online space becoming popular enough that you advertise it like you would advertise. Oh, hey, I always see those flyers go up for like the New Year's Eve parties and things like that around here. And the idea of seeing something like that for an online space is actually kind of fun and interesting. This is just such a terrible way to go about it.
Don't use copyrighted material in order to advertise your party. I mean, do like what we do and create your own graphics for it.
I am also told that apparently some of the discords or other things linked to on the billboard included cybersex services and the like. So having all these official logos and the thing with like Square Enix's copyright logo on there associated with lurid activity probably just made it that much worse.
Exactly. So basically, don't do
Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating, but in the way that like a train wreck is fascinating.
Yeah. basically.
Oh.
And a couple bits of Final Fantasy XVI news. Yoshida let it be known in an interview that Final Fantasy XVI would have taken 15 years or more to make if it had been made as an open world game. This is according to an interview from videogameschronicle.com. He's saying that let's see, the production, dialogue, timing, the drama, the sound, they all combined to... Nope, that's not what I wanted to read there. There's so much stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things. Again, the gaming industry has famously been tight-lipped about all sorts of details related to them. And then you have good old Yoshi P going out there and talking about all of these really in-depth design decisions. This is not just the way he's been doing things for Final Fantasy XIV. This appears to be how he likes to conduct business in general.
I mean, he's saying, he wanted a story of a hero who saves the world. Wanted to want a summon to go wild and destroy the map, and he wanted to release it as soon as possible. But he can't release the game in parts because it's a one-shot game, realistically, at this point. And when he considered all the points that he had, it would have been practically impossible to ask for everything. If he had a development period of about 15 years, he may have had the opportunity of challenging themselves with an open world. But because of the constraints and wanting to get the game out in a timely fashion, I mean, it's been 6 years since Final Fantasy 15.
I think so, yeah.
So and we're still about almost 2 years out from the estimated release window of Final Fantasy 16. So yeah,
we've got another couple articles here. Looks like this is translated from an interview in the latest issue Famitsu, where Yoshi P talked about how while he grew up with command and turn-based RPGs, he feels that younger generations, younger gamers are a bit more used to kind of real-time stuff, talking about actions such as press the trigger and your character will shoot a gun can be expressed without going through command system. We talked a little bit about some of the design philosophies of that, how this has progressed through tabletop games to classic JRPGs to modern ones. One of the big upshots being that the combat will not be turn-based, in part because he does want to appeal to a younger audience. It looks like he does want to keep adding new fans to the Final Fantasy franchise, keep expanding that audience.
And realistically, the old turn-based system hasn't been a thing since Final Fantasy X, for the most part. 11 was kind of a real-time, the MMO.
Yeah.
12 was the offline version of 11, so to speak, as far as the gameplay went. So it was realistically... It was live combat.
And 13 was kind of quasi, it was kind of in a weird in-between space.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't completely turn-based, but it also wasn't completely live action. But then with 15 being fully action RPG, as well as 7 Remake, Square Enix is really doubling down on the action RPG style of gameplay. And with the combat director from Devil May Cry as part of the Final Fantasy XVI team, they have a good person in place to be able to really solidify that gameplay style. So it should be something that not only new gamers can enjoy, but also the Final Fantasy fans can hopefully still enjoy that type of gameplay as well.
Now, of course, the thing I really took away from that was a discussion of how the development team was actually examining what audience they wanted to appeal to and reassess that and not just assume that they're going for the same gamers they always have. I know plenty of people who have griped about how other companies like media producers will keep appealing to, say, boomers without necessarily thinking about have tastes changed and are you going to expand to these new audiences. So it is nice to see that they're considering that they're not just writing off the younger generations. Even as someone who is a little bit of the older vanguard in this, it's still nice to see, hey, we're giving consideration for getting new people into this hobby.
Exactly. So, like I said, I enjoyed 15 might have been a little bit rough as far as the action RPG style went, but once you got into the swing of it, it wasn't bad. And I really did enjoy how Final Fantasy VII Remake played out. The one question that I do have, though, is being 7 had the ability to kind of go back to a turn-based style in that classic mode. I wonder if that's something they may potentially be implementing with 16 as well.
I guess it would depend on how much development resources that's going to take.
I mean, exactly. It could be something that where they could easily copy that over from 7, or depending on how
I think
the game style is.
They're doing a different engine for it, aren't they?
Unreal, I believe, is what they're using. Unreal Engine 5, I think, for both 7 Rebirth and 16.
Yeah, I'm trying to
You'll have
remember
to
what they
correct us
used
if
for.
I'm wrong, but I believe they're on Unreal Engine now, because it's
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what they used for FF7 Remake, because we don't even know if Rebirth is going to have that same turn-based mode.
Well, we're hoping so, but if we'll have to see.
Yeah, but yeah. So, yeah, lots more bits and pieces coming out about those upcoming games as we're starting to move towards those, get within spitting distance of those actual release dates. We're getting that flood of information coming out and starting to get a lot of those fun details. And especially with someone like Yoshi P, who really seems to not just want to it's not just a matter of wanting to be open. It seems like he derives some amount of actual joy out of talking about the technical aspects and sharing this thought process. Like the type of person you would sit down with a beer or a smoothie or whatever your beverage of choice is and just talk about game design for a while. He would be totally into it.
Well, his beverage of choice will be alcoholic.
I mean, yeah. I'd probably go for a smoothie.
Well,
like half a glass of wine and I'm gone.
Oh, that could be interesting.
You are not the first person to think this.
Next Fan Fest, guys. Come on.
Next time you see Anonymous, ask him what it means when I'm screaming about my drink being blue. I didn't know what it was, but it was blue.
Well, wasn't that at FanFest 2016?
Yeah. I pretty much told the bartender, I don't know anything about alcohol. These are the types of tastes I tend to like. Make me something you think would be good. And so when I met up with Moose, he was like, what are you drinking? I was like, I don't know, but it's blue.
It's blue.
But yeah.
That's our Seyrr.
Natural lightweight. I'm on 2 different medications that make you more susceptible to alcohol.
Cheap date.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the food's going to set you back $1,000, but the booze is cheap.
Well, I mean, if you start with the drinks, maybe you'll be happy with some Jack in the Box.
Plus, if you start with the drinks, I get drunk faster.
That's true.
Anyway,
sorry, I that was terrible of me.
I'm apparently in a mood today.
All right, so I'm going to link to finalfantasy.fandom.com. It is the it'll take you to the Final Fantasy XII Disc 3 portion, which is what we're going to be discussing tonight. So let's go ahead and get started with the Yensen Sansi.
So this is the point where we've kind of like they've been to the tomb of Wraithwall? No.
Wraithwall's tomb.
Wraithwall. It was Wraithwall. Why did I think Wraithwall was wrong? And so we've started expanding to this broader thing of seeking this power of the Esper, seeking these Nethicite, seeking for this strength that can stand against the Empire. And that's what we're starting to see in a lot of this portion of the game.
Also, if I remember correctly, there's a lot of kind of ruined construction type equipment out here, isn't there? It's kind of really industrial looking.
Some bits actually reminded me of like a disused oil rig or something similar.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, it seems very technological for, how this world actually is. So it's very different than what we would expect. But they have airships, though. Yeah.
I mean, this would not be the first time in a Final Fantasy setting we'd seen what appears to be a fantasy world that ends up being built atop the ruins of something more advanced.
No way.
Oh, apparently they are actually oil rigs that had been built to drill oil out of the sand sea, but
Drill, baby, drill.
but because of interference by the local humanoids, the Uratan Yensa, an ant-like race, because of interference from them, the rigs were abandoned and are now used as walkways to cross the desert.
So that's why they would seem like oil rigs, because they were.
Like this big sweeping open thing, especially this desert-like environment. Like, I know there was a lot of moving over the oil rigs for the sake of gameplay flow, but you have just like this big expansive environment where it's like not even necessarily clear where you're going. You're wandering in the desert.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sandstorms that go through this as well. So I mean, a lot of the landscape is pretty obfuscated during this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. After that, we have a battle with an Esper. Final Fantasy XII has a very, very different system with their summons. You unlock them from the license board. And once you unlock them, I believe you have to then fight them.
I think was it that they only appear on the license board once they've been defeated?
It's been a while since I've played, but I know only one person can have that Esper unlocked on their board.
Yep.
And the more Espers you have unlocked, up to a maximum of 3, I believe, the more charges of magic you get.
Yeah. Especially important for the limit break system.
As well as it's also what you use that to cast your spells as well.
Right.
So until you unlock an Esper, I don't believe you can cast magic. Is that correct, or am I incorrect on that? Or do you get the first one regardless, and then you get a second one once you add a second Esper?
I cannot remember off the top of my head. It's been a while.
I do recall that the more Espers you have, the more charges you have.
I think it's that you do have access to magic, but the mist gauges that are used for summoning anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, sidetracking a little bit there.
But, I mean, it's an important gameplay mechanic of the game.
Yeah. The story setting has the Espers as magical beings that were created by the Okuria. And there are at least 24 of them that are discussed in the course of the game. Each zodiac sign having a light and a dark representative. The story of the Espers includes a kind of Lucifer-like rebellion against heaven, where the highest-ranking one, Ultima, rose up against the gods and rallied the Espers of Darkness. Even with their combined power, they were defeated and banished and sealed away, and thus becoming only being able to walk the earth again once they have been called by a summoner. The reason I bring this up is, again, for our Final Fantasy XIV players, the Espers of Darkness are ones that we've heard of before. If you've played Final Fantasy Tactics, Belias, Zalera, Hasmal. There were several that were never named in Tactics, and so they added in Espers based on bosses from other Final Fantasies. So you had Chaos, Famfrit, Exodus. Yep.
Zodiark.
Yep. But then their corresponding scions of light, you have names like Logriff, Metron, Fandaniel, Emmett Selk, Nabriales.
Sound familiar?
Yep. So yeah, those kind of Espers of light, those names would later be reused in Final Fantasy XIV as the names of the Ascians. Originally, it was just a callback. It only took on the significance it has in the story much later on.
But, I mean, it was a good story, so, I mean, kudos.
All right.
Anyway, the next song we have is called Sorrow, the Imperial version. Here we go with the versioning again. But this plays during scenes that involve deaths in Imperial Arcadia. I can't for the life of me think of any specifics, but I mean, it's been 9 years since I played the game. Was there something that happened when we go into Arcadia for the first time?
Let me see.
Like some diplomat or something ends up either being killed or dies during our visit, and then there's like some sort of memorial or something.
I think there were some other points where it was used. I mean, this is not a game where there's a clear good guy and bad guy, and so there are sympathetic characters on the Imperial side as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you've got your kind of low, lots of strings.
It's very pretty, but very, very sad.
Yeah, you got that minor key. Very subdued vibe, of course.
I just really enjoy string songs like this. It's just, they're really, it's hard to explain, but they're nice to listen to. Even if it's in a minor key and somewhat somber toned, it's still kind of calming. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And from here, we move on from a very somber song.
I can actually imagine snow falling while I listen to this one. Like, it sounds like the type of thing that we played over, like, snow silently falling on, like, over a graveyard or something.
Possibly. But we go from this somber tone to something a little bit more sinister.
I would go with foreboding. Like, it's not necessarily evil, but it's something that says there's trouble ahead.
Well, the song is called Seeking Power. So, depending on who the seeker will really determine, I suppose, how, the outcome is actually going to be.
Right. And oftentimes you don't get to really know the nature of that until they've acquired the power and whatever they start doing with it.
Yep. No, this is the theme location for the Paramina Rift.
Yeah. It is a mountain pass in Evilise that must be crossed to get to Mount Bur Amases. I am never sure if I'm pronouncing these properly. A very important location that the Seeking Power name, I think, comes from the mountain being like this major sort of holy site for a religion associated with all sorts of ancient powers. It's a place that the party is heading to in pursuit of various types of power, so makes sense to have this piece like this for the pathway that they're going along as they're making their way towards it.
But yeah, it's definitely something how do I want to word this? Explaining music can sometimes be difficult. I mean,
I'm still going with foreboding.
Yeah. I mean, there is a reason why the phrase "when words fail, music speaks" is very apt. So it's able to express the feelings that maybe you can't, verbally, express. So,
Right. There is a certain amount of tension to it. I feels like you've got some parts of it that are just not resolving, making the entire thing a little bit more uncomfortable.
all right, let's go ahead and move forward into a boss battle theme called Life and Death.
Now, this is similar to some of the other ones we've heard, but it feels a little more focused, a little less like bombastic and big. This is the point of the this is the music for a point in a fight where you've stopped with the big flashy sword moves and acrobatic twirls, and you are just swinging wildly and pushing against each other. It is turned into the brutal portion of the fight.
Well, this is the plays when we're fighting Vossler, Gabranth, and Dr. Sid. So it's a 3-on-3 battle at this point. I mean, and Gabranth is one of the major judges for the Arcadian Empire, so he's no slouch. And neither really is Vossler or Dr. Sid.
Yeah. The fight against Dr. Sid is interesting. Although Sid's been a Final Fantasy mainstay, I think this is actually the first installment where not just that he's not necessarily an ally, but you actually do battle against him.
I'm trying to think. You may be correct on that.
Yeah. Now, he doesn't necessarily is not trying to kill you, and in fact, we do find out that he's directly connected with one of our party members. But we've seen a number of mutterings from him. There's a phrase that he mentions a couple times: "The reins of history in the hands of man." The idea that, especially with those espers, with the various gods that created and control them, that there's this kind of higher power that rules over evilies, and the idea of like wresting power out of the hands of it, no longer dancing on their strings, and putting control back into the hands of man. That's an idea that gets referenced a few times with Sid, along with a couple other characters that we've run into more later on.
It sounds very Lord of the Rings like, though.
Ish.
But then maybe the whole Rings of Power thing. One ring to rule them all. Just kidding. Moving on, we go to another location. Jaharta, land of the Garif. Guess what this theme is for?
I'm guessing it is the location theme for Jahara, where one might find the Garif.
You would be correct, sir.
I must be a genius.
Yay! The Garif are a kind of a tribal group. They live out kind of on the edges of civilization. They're kind of a hunter and tribal based community, and if I remember correctly, they're kind of beast-like
Ish. I mean, like, they've got a little bit of like that kind of almost not quite the noble savage trope, but they're very relatively primitive culture. Mm-hmm. They shun technology. They are one of the most knowledgeable about the lore of magicite, so like the nethicite and the like. And so Princess Ash, having learned about deifacted nethicite as something that might give her the strength to fight against the Empire, wanting to know how she might be able to harness that power, we end up visiting Jahara so that we can talk with the Garif about the lore of the magicite and find out more about how this stone might be used.
The quest line for these guys actually was quite interesting. You got to learn a lot about the land. And the area was actually kind of fun and pretty, and I believe we get to ride chocobos around here? Or we ride
think so.
something around there, I thought. Again, a lot of my memory is a little fuzzy on a lot of the details. I think there was chocobos in this area that we got to ride with, and then it was like some mazes through these caves in the area, and
We also have a bit more of a development of the political aspect of the story, as while the party's at Jahara, they're met by Larsa, the fourth son of the ruling family, Solidor family, who wants to propose a plan to Ash to prevent the war that is building up between Arcades and Dalmasca. Ash, of course, is kind of reluctant to go along with this. There's actually a scene where she takes a walk around the village at night and is met by a ghostly vision of her late husband, Lord Rassler. Interestingly enough, Vaughn sees Ash wandering around the village and notes that he is also able to see this vision. So this isn't just some type of ghostly memory only appearing to Ash. This is something that others can see as well. A little bit of a curious element.
Spoopy. Either that, he got too much peyote.
But yeah, the chat that the two of them have eventually inspires Ash to agree to Larsa's plan to head to Mount Bur Amasace.
But it takes them a while to get there, and as they start to travel, they go through the Osmone Plains. I love a lot of these location themes.
Yeah, like the feel is different, but there are some parts that are reminiscent of like the Esther Sand.
Mm-hmm.
Some bits where it's like, okay, we're just out in the world and we're hunting, and a bit of that kind of energetic feel to it.
Kind of has the whole overworld theme kind of feeling with each of these locations.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are songs you are going to hear quite a bit as you're traveling through these areas.
Yeah. The places that you don't go through as often tend to have a bit more of like the atmospheric and mood setting pieces. The ones that you're going to go to a lot, whether it's because it's kind of a hub or there's lots of hunt marks or things like that, do tend to have stuff that can fit a wider variety of situations. It's an interesting design choice. It makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Something that's easier for you to kind of enjoy and relax without being too overbearing for listening to it for quite a long time.
For the player, at least, it is still an adventure. You do still get to have some fun with it, even if the mood is becoming more grim for the party.
And as we finish our path across the Osmone Plains, we make it to the Golmore Jungle.
Now, the Golmore Jungle is the home to Eri Village, of the Fran's home village, from which she is to which she is no longer welcome to return.
Because she broke the rules and left the village.
Yep.
They don't like that.
Yeah. There's lots of different directions you can take with the forest theme, and this one's gone kind of a little like the Zelda Lost Woods, in that you've got like something that's a little more like confusing and almost frenetic. Not quite frenetic, but more at times. Like, this is the type of jungle that doesn't want you in it and is like putting up barriers of vines or getting you turned around. The wood does not welcome visitors.
It's a very lush and overgrown jungle. There are pathways through, but there are also a lot of plant-based monsters ready to strike at any unwary travelers.
Yeah.
It's not safe.
The Viera who live in Golmore regard the wood as a whole as a living being that can speak to them directly.
This is also the home to one of the more troublesome hunts. I think it's the first of the elite hunt marks that I can recall. It Carrot. I don't know if you remember that one. I remember it's available early, but oh my God, is he? He has a lot of requirements in order to actually defeat him properly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fun. But as we cross through the jungle, we do eventually make it to Fran's home village. And the feeling here is a lot different than the outside jungle.
Those high chimes are really adding a bit to that mystical feeling. Very just good. And those woodwinds. Woodwind, harp, and then that very high pitched, like almost like a triangle or something similar.
There's a bell or some sort of chime, yeah.
Some type of percussive, yeah.
I still think I prefer Lahi. Which, for the 14 players, you know, that area is kind of that version of the Golmore jungle. But
there's slightly different feels to those woods.
Yeah, but they're still both very overgrown.
All right. Golmore and Erut. I'm never sure. Anyways,
Erut
has a bit more of like that isolated feeling. Like, yes, there's these. Rocktika Greatwood has a bit more of like there's ruins of ancient civilizations. Like, there's almost this is the music at the dawn of time kind of thing for that. And here it's more again like the hidden within the trees aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their village is built atop or very high up in these very tall trees. Now, while Fran
hearing stuff like this in a village theme is a bit weird.
Yeah. Now, while Fran isn't necessarily welcomed back, she's not exactly completely shunned out either. There are still people there are still other Vieira who will talk with her and, us as well to help us to, get through the jungle and, continue on our path.
It's less of you left the thing and now we don't like you, and more of we still love you and miss you and care about you, but also this is our way, and so we can't just welcome you back in, but we'll do what we can to support you in our own way.
But get out as soon as you can.
Yeah. The wood does not forgive.
Yeah, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Next up, we've got a very short little track.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into that. It's called Try to Grow Up, which I love the Japanese name. The literal translation of it is "You're really a child."
Yeah, it's used to punctuate a scene that gives a bit of comic relief and breaks some of the growing tension we've had with the weight of the trip to for these potential peace talks, with Fran's returning to the village that no longer welcomes her, Vaughn being the occasionally guileless and well-meaning child, as it says, notes that Fran has made an interesting comment about how long a particular thing has been that suggests that she lived and witnessed those events. And so he outright asks Fran, okay, wait a minute, how old are you? Cue the entire party stopping in their tracks, staring at him for a moment before making dismissive and or angry comments and leaving a clueless and confused Vaughn in the dust.
Yes.
You just don't ask a lady that. It's a nice little moment of comic relief and a reminder again that Vaughn is still approaching a lot of this stuff with the viewpoint of a child, which often includes sometimes the innocence and relatively pure ideals of a child, which will turn out to be important. A lot of this is a lot of his personal story involves taking some part of that and helping shepherd it and keep some of that idealism as he's being pretty much exposed to the nastiness of the world.
Yep.
Because yes, Vaughn does have a character arc. Just because it's subtle doesn't mean it isn't there. Anyways.
And he's got a hell of a set of abs.
Oh yeah. Dude works out.
Anyway, we're coming on my favorite song of the soundtrack.
There it is.
Doesn't matter what game it is. For the most part, I love the Chocobo themes. And this is definitely a Chocobo theme with an Evolution twist.
Oh yeah, you can really feel it feels more Evolution than Chocobo. I mean, there's still the Chocobo elements there, but
But you've got all those various odd woodwinds that seem to make up the background of a lot of these songs, and just the different feel that it has. It's not
percussion.
It's not quite as upbeat as the standard Chocobo theme, but it's still got a little bit of that swing.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Very Evolution take. I do like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't even quite have the full traditional Chocobo loop. It's kind of sampling bits and pieces of it before, like, having to go into the complex multi-layered thing that you get for.
It goes into it right here. Or a little bit of it, and then it cuts out. So, it's like it's splitting it and taking it in pieces.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that really makes it feel like it's Evolution first and Chocobo second. Still Chocobo, though.
Here we get through it.
Though they're doing some interesting stuff with the key changes.
Mm-hmm. It takes the entire 2 minutes to get through what would be a full verse of the Chocobo theme, but still.
Yeah.
They kind of meander and go back and forth, and then they take you right through it.
It's a fun take on it. I like it.
Indeed. It's not crazy Chocobo, but it's still good. And then our next song is a little bit more serious. This is called Threat Impendent. Means some shit's gonna go down. And it hits right there. This is the location theme for the Henny Mines, as well as it plays when Skyfortress Bahamut approaches the royal city of Rabanastre. So like I said...
Henny Mines...
No, go ahead.
Henny Mines is an Imperial Magicite mine that we visit looking for one of Fran's sisters in hopes of getting her help in getting through the Golmore Jungle's barriers.
Mjrn, right?
Mjrn, yes.
That's quite a name. M-J-R-N. Mjrn.
I mean, there didn't used to be a letter J. It kind of grew out of the letter I, and there's a whole bunch of... This is an entire, like, linguistics orthography thing that we can get into another time. But we do find Mjrn in the depths of the mines, having been used by the Empire for scientific experiments in researching Nethicite. She's been driven mad by mist and sends monsters after the party. We do, of course, have to defeat those monsters to break the spell over her, breaking her Nethicite in the process.
Yay!
Yeah. This is also, at this point, Larsa realizes just how dangerous Nethicite could be, even manufactured Nethicite. And it's at this point that he takes back the piece that he had given the party. But yeah, between that location and the bit where the Sky Fortress Bahamut is approaching Rabanastre, you've got a lot of, like, again, building up to that tension, something bad is about to happen.
Now, this next song is probably my second favorite in this entire soundtrack. A very different take on a very amazing theme. Because it can't be a Final Fantasy without our friend Greg.
Take the moment to get going.
But like I said, again, it's an Evilisian take on Battle of the Big Bridge.
There it is.
But they do get the horns in there a little bit, but they're subdued.
Yep, there's that minor key again.
I kind of like it in the minor key.
Oh yeah, no, it's an interesting element. Gilgamesh and Enkidu are, of course, available as, I believe, their bonus bosses, hunt marks.
There's also a bit where you can get the Excalibur. If you defeat him, I believe it's 3 or 4 times throughout the game at different locations.
Yeah.
So he's a hunt mark as well as, it's an ultimate weapon find, so.
Yep. I think you can also get Genji armor out of him, which has been a recurring thing for Gilgamesh.
Yep. Which it's some of the best armor. I think it's the second best set of armor in the game.
Yeah. Now, while this one, Gilgamesh does make vague references to having traversed a rift, it is not explicitly they don't explicitly say that, yes, this is the one from Final Fantasy V.
I thought that past interviews with the producers of the game and basically it's become canon that it is the same Gilgamesh.
It's still kind of weird. I'm not sure if there's I think that individual installments can decide that, but there's not necessarily a single all Gilgameshes are the same Gilgamesh.
Well, I want to believe. Because even in 14, it talks about that he's traveled, across the vast voids of time and space.
So I mean, a lot of them say that, and then some of them will get self-referential and fourth wall breaky. It is difficult to put consistent rules on Gilgamesh, in part because they're doing that on purpose at this point.
Gilgamesh is Deadpool confirmed.
Yeah, you know what? I'm okay with that.
I mean, they're both a little bit nuts. So I mean,
the FF12 version of Gilgamesh does have the continued habit of taking weapons away from people that he has fought and defeated. Mm-hmm. Call back to the original legend of I believe, was it Benkei? There's a Japanese warrior about whom there was legend, including having been fought on a large bridge.
Yep, and also I think there was also an ancient, was it Sumerian or was it the actual Gilgamesh from history?
Yeah, the name comes from that along with a couple other aspects, but a lot of things like the taking weapons fighting on a big bridge, and all that comes from the legend of Benkei.
I like the combination of the two.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So let's continue on. This is the location theme for Mount Bur Amasis. It's called Discard Power. It's very ethereal. And then we get that nice flute that jumps in at this point.
the title is interesting given how much of the game, especially when they reach Mount Bur Amasis, there's the goal to like try to negotiate for peace, try to prevent this war. And this is also used in scenes where Ash meets with the Okuria, who again are trying to convince her to wield power, to take revenge, to retake her kingdom. And the idea of what one does with this power and whether one even keeps or discards it is a recurring theme throughout the stuff involving the Okuria.
Yep. But the thing with this, I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, having to wield the Nethicite or not.
Yep.
Because that is kind of the biggest thing where the Arcadian Empire are, you know, hell-bent on, you know, creating their own power with the manufactured Nethicite. And then there's the real deal article, the deified version of it, the natural stuff.
Right.
That comes from, it's basically like the symbol of the king kind of thing. He who holds the Nethicite will rule these lands.
Of course, the Nethicite having been granted to him by the gods, the Okuria in this case. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we end up seeing this as kind of a ongoing cycle of the Okuria granting this power to individuals that they'll be able to control and manipulate to direct human history as they see fit.
Yep, and then I think that's where, you know, as Ash kind of sees this as the case, she's like, I don't want to be, you know, a puppet leader. I don't want to do your will. I want to do what's right for the people.
Yep. Fun fact, talking about the Okuria, we had those references that showed up in Final Fantasy XIV with the names of the Ascians. The leader of the Okuria is Gerun, which Urianger's, a lot of his prophecies come from the Gerun Chronicles. And there was one Okuria who rebelled against them, was working with Cid, the one that Cid was talking to when he was talking to some unseen thing about putting the reins of history in the hands of man. That Okuria was named Vena. So yes, so this would again show up in Final Fantasy XIV as having these 12 espers, having these things that were taken from that, and then here is the one who rebelled.
So where's Hydaelyn? All right, anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This is a very different theme from what we've heard, you know, it doesn't really seem to be, you know, very cheery, nor does it seem to be very scary. I'm like I said, this is for the Shrine of Miriam, and it just has a very,
I mean, the Still Shrine is an ancient shrine in which the Sword of Kings is laid, along with other relics from the time of Wraithwall.
It's got a little bit of a kind of a regal feel, but not quite.
Yeah.
Without as much pomp.
Yeah, like it also has a lot of the elements that I've seen in previous stuff. That you have like sort of archaeological sites, ancient ruins, long, silent, dusty halls with traps and the like laid within.
I mean, the place is locked if you don't have access, if you don't have the Dawn Shard, basically.
Yep.
So it's only accessible by the Chosen in that case.
Yep.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the Okuria in this case, although the Dawn Shard has lost its power, it can still be used to open the Still Shrine, and so the Okuria have directed Ash here to take the Sword of Kings, which she can use to cut a piece of Nethicite off of the great, what was the name of the crystal? The Grand Crystal, I believe it was. And that this sword that can cut Nethicite can also be used to destroy the Empire's power. And so it's like something that can be this great weapon to fight against them. Like the Okuria are pretty much trying to set up Ash as King Wraithwall round 2.
has, like I said, I like the sound of this. It's a very nice song. Like I said, it doesn't instill fear or calm. It's just, it is. You know?
Yeah, that background percussion, the shaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though it's not quite that, it makes me think both of like someone walking through like sand or like, but not like a desert, more like just like a fine layer of dust and dirt on the thing, but also a little bit of like sand falling through an hourglass. Like it has some of those elements. Like it gives me that feel, which kind of goes again with that feeling of like this ancient place.
All right. And as we get through some of these larger dungeons, like the Still Shrine, like the Tomb of Wraithwall, we get this. We get a bit of respite.
This is a piece that plays at the end of a number of those dungeons, so somewhere where we've delved deep into the often oppressive and weighty relics of the past, and kind of emerging from that back out into the world. There's a nice kind of peaceful, serene bit of it. We've been through the fire and trials and come out the other side.
And this is a very relaxing theme.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes there's some discussion going on about the significance of what they've just accomplished or their next steps. But it's not quite celebratory. It's more relief than anything else.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and continue on with our next theme. The Room of White. This is more of a theme of reminiscence. It plays when Van kind of thinks of his brother Rex's last moments, as well as plays at Mount Bur Amasis when after we defeat Judge Bergen.
Yeah. The White Room is a literal White Room in which Vaughn shared Rex's last moments with him. Rex was not killed immediately at, was it? Wasn't Albina, was he? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was Nalbina.
Nalbina, but was destroyed physically and mentally by the attack and by witnessing the murder of the assassination of his king, but remained alive long enough to testify about what he had seen. And so ended up being the final nail in the coffin for Bosch. We do have scenes of Vaughn gathering the lilies that Rex had liked, and of a like almost clean antiseptic hospital-style white room, where we see Rex just sitting in a chair staring out vacantly.
Kind of sad. All right. Our next theme is the Salika Wood. Or the Salika Wood. I don't know how you exactly pronounce it.
I would go with Salika Wood, but
Salika, Salika, tomato, tomato. But this is the theme for the Salika Wood.
Yep. It is the, you have to pass through this wood if you want to reach Arcadia on foot. Given the advent of airship technology, the various bridges and pathways through it have become disused and dilapidated. Pretty much it was once this like major transport route that has been reclaimed by nature, slowly being choked by monsters.
Yep. It's not quite as overgrown as the Golmore jungle, but it is still a little bit harder to pass.
Yes.
A lot of the paths being, like you said, taken back to nature.
Yep. There's a definite difference between the idea of, okay, here's this forest, it's almost like a sacred forest that protects itself, and here's this place that once did have these roads and other stuff through it, and it's just slowly being reclaimed. There's a bit more of a feral nature to the latter.
Yep. And the monsters that roam throughout the Salica Wood are definitely more vicious.
Yeah. Well, the name comes from the Latin word for and the modern scientific genus of the willow tree. Neat.
That bit right there in the song it's very interesting to a lot of, you don't hear that a lot within the songs for this soundtrack.
Yeah, that piano thing, it's not something I would typically expect in an Evolution piece.
I mean, it's very nice, but it's hard
This bit is more the type of thing I would be used to hearing.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So yeah, kind of this alien foreign element drifting in, appropriate for a place that's on the border of this foreign power.
Next, we make our way to the Fawn Coast. I mean, this is the location theme for Fawn Coast, but also plays when Balthier shows Von the Strahl for the first time.
Yeah. Like, it feels more appropriate to the airshipy aspects.
Mm-hmm. It's a very open and airy theme. Very, you feel like you're gonna fly up into the sky with this one. It's a very open and freeing sound.
The Fawn Coast itself is home to a hunter camp, so there's a fair amount of your usual hunter activities going on here as well.
Yep, and it's a pretty open area as well. It's right along the ocean. It's not overgrown or covered in mist. It is foot travel is pretty easy to go through. Aside from the monsters, but
I mean, thinking about it in terms of the feel of the zone and the music, I would compare it to Final Fantasy XIV's Hullbreaker Isle. A little bit like it's full of the spirit of adventure, and we are going to go forth.
Yeah, I can see it in that aspect. Yeah, it's very adventuresome. Yeah. That's a good way to explain it.
Yes. Like, we are passing through for slightly more serious reasons, but you can absolutely come back here. I believe the Hunt Club quests are here, yes. Mm-hmm. And so you can start hunting rare game here. All sorts of other fun stuff like that.
But it's very different from a lot of the other themes as well. It doesn't have that Evolution twist to it. It's very brass heavy.
Yeah. This is another location that's on, like, the wood was where you passed through to get to the Arcadian Empire, but this is the actual border of it.
All right.
So having the kind of crossing over into a different nation with a different way of doing things aspect.
And our next theme is more solemn. This is called The Fates. It plays during the solemn moments with several plot characters, such as during Balthier and Ash's conversation at Fawn Coast, as well as after the defeat of Vayne Novus.
It's interesting to have that title of the Fates, given how much of the overarching story seems to be fighting against the Fates in the form of the Okuria.
Yep. Maybe Clash of the Fates would be something more appropriate.
I think that one's already taken.
Ah. And as we make our way through the Fawn Coast, we eventually encounter the Soken Cave Palace. And this is the theme for that zone.
Continuing on our pathway into the Arcadian Empire.
This is basically a series of caves that were cut through the mountain to get from the Fawn Coast into deeper into the actual Arcadian Empire, into the capital city.
Yep.
And there's a lot of spooky shit going on in here.
Given the nature of who the party is, they of course cannot travel out in the open, so through the cave system is the only option.
And it's a maze-like dungeon in here, with lots of twists and turns, a number of puzzles that need to be solved.
A fairly annoying monster hunt.
And quite a difficult boss fight too.
Yeah.
If you're not well prepared. I mean, if I remember correctly, I spent a lot of time on Fawn Coast leveling up.
Yeah. The Mandragoras that have again been referenced in Final Fantasy since make their appearance in the Soken Cave Palace. Pretty much 5 different plant monsters: a Tomato King, Mandragora Queen, Onion, all the different ones. Or I think it was the Onion Jester, whichever it is.
Garlic Jester, Onion
Garlic
Knight,
Jester,
and Tomato Prince.
I thought there was an eggplant in there, but now I'm not sure.
Or is it?
At any rate, several Mandragoras based off of different plants, each one using a variety of different status effects that will not miss if you do not have defenses up against them. So they're not necessarily super strong on their own, but they can very quickly disable an unprepared party.
Yeah, this is only the first place they show up, because they also show up later on in the game as well, in numbers. I mean, they're all over the place in another zone. Let's see. See if I can find the full list of all of them here. Okay, according to this, we've got Pumpkin Star, Onion Queen, actually they're different named in 12 than they are in 14.
Yeah, there have been a couple different representation of the Mandragoras in different Final Fantasies.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next theme. Now, instead of having a little bit of respite, now we have a moment's rest. This is first heard in the Valley of Death in the Tomb of Wraithwall, but is also the location theme for Old Arcades and the Ritterana Cataract.
Now, Old Arcades is the slum town portion of the Arcadian capital city.
The lower town.
It's totally a slum.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't used to be.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
it's like Respite in that it's not necessarily celebratory, but it's more about the like, hey, we get a moment to relax. But this one does feel a little more subdued.
they can relax, but they can't still let their guard down.
Yeah, respite. The word respite kind of carries a connotation of being safe, of being like in this. And you don't quite get that as much with A Moment's Rest. So kudos to the localizers for their naming of these. Like,
Exactly.
Good use of the connotations.
It's like they do their research or something. Maybe they have a librarian on staff.
Oh, they almost certainly do. But yeah, this used as a town theme, this is not a vibrant town bursting with energy and commerce and trade. This is one where people keep their head down and are just trying to get by from day to day.
Indeed.
I believe it was at Old Arcades where you have the information trading minigame.
I think so. Well, no, that's in higher up when you, I think, isn't it? Where you have to go back and forth and talk to certain people.
Yeah, I think it's...
Or maybe it does start here, but it involves having to go up higher in the city too.
Yes, I believe it starts down there, and you have to broker information trades because information is gold to the people of Old Arcades. But you have to broker those trades in order to earn access to higher and higher areas. Oh, interesting. Looking at stuff on that, in the original original version of FF12, there is no treasure in Old Arcades. The Zodiac versions added some chests to location, but the treasure is some of the worst you'll find in the game to symbolize kind of the poverty of the area.
A lot of knots of rust.
Knots of rust or gil, but like less than 20 gil.
Hero tax.
Yeah, for this little, you kind of feel like maybe you should put it back.
Yeah, with interest.
You need this more than we do.
All right, as we move on. This is a theme we hear in a lot of outposts throughout Ivalice. It's called On the Riverbank.
Yeah. As the name suggests, these outposts are typically on a riverbank, on a source of water. I mean, that's just good outpost design in general. Throughout history, you put stuff by sources of water because you need it.
Because you got to get that flow of trade and information.
And hydration.
Stay hydrated.
Not a bad idea. Oh my god, I needed that.
Yes, you must stay hydrated, Seyrr. But with these, it's a very... This is kind of an area of more... where you can have that little bit of relaxation. Yeah.
Like, it's got some of those rest and respite elements from the pieces we talked about earlier, but also a little bit of the, like... There's a... not quite excitement, but sort of interest as to, okay, what's going to be coming down the river or coming to the riverbank next. This is a place where you can stop and catch your breath, but it's also a place that people and things come through.
Mm-hmm. You can resupply, you can upgrade armor and spells and gambits. Just, there's a lot to be found. So it's a bit exciting.
Yeah. And yeah, when you hear this theme, it's kind of a little reminder of like, okay, you've reached a way station on your journey.
And then the final theme of Disc 3 is the location theme for the Mosforan High Waste. It's a mountain pass that brings travelers to the outskirts of the Salika Wood.
Yeah, this is another one that I don't think there was as much that you do plot-wise here, but there's a lot more hunting and adventuring that happens, if I recall correctly.
There is an Esper here that you can unlock, but aside from that, it's just kind of a kind of a waste, a travel through area. But it's definitely got us. This theme has that sense of adventure again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a nice sound to end the this disc on.
Yeah. It's not a conclusory one. There's more adventure to be had.
Indeed.
But it's something where the party has again infiltrated the Empire, made their way deeper into, well, to try to strike back at the power of the Empire. And so you could stick a cliffhanger on it, but it's kind of nice to have okay, now we're just going to have a momentary brief of, again, respite and freedom and enjoy the adventure.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this is kind of a multi-level zone that you have to kind of find the paths and climb your way up.
Mm-hmm.
But that, folks, was disc 3 of Final Fantasy XII.
The name High Waste is kind of cool. Like, I suppose it's supposed to be like kind of a mix of like a highland and a wasteland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not something you hear too often.
Mm-hmm. Man, playing Final Fantasy games has added so many archaic terms to my vocabulary. I have a couple friends who they started playing Final Fantasy XIV and they're like, oh my gosh, Seyrr, now we know where you get all of those words you keep using.
No, the sad part is you knew them way before you played 14.
A couple of them, but they got them into more regular usage. Like, being exposed to them repeatedly definitely helps. And sometimes you just feel like saying any road.
All right.
Like right now, how any road, that'll do us for this week.
Anything else you want to add?
Oh. So this was a disc, and this is the portion of it where we really start getting into some of those broader themes of Final Fantasy XII, where you have the lure of power, the reasons that people seek power for revenge, for freedom, in the case of Balthier, who we do find is Cid's erstwhile son, who could have had a position as an engineer in the Arcadian Empire, but instead chose the freedom-loving life of a sky pirate.
Yar.
Like, a lot of the characters are confronted with what the desires they have, the power that they need to take in order to make those realize those desires, and the consequences of that. So a lot of the exploration of kind of the nature of power, how one gets it. In the case of the power offered by the Ikuria, the catches that can come along with that. This is where we really start to get into a lot of those deeper themes that lie under the politicking of the story. So in some, like, it's a bit that for some people may have seemed to drag a little bit or really get into the weeds in a lot of details, but it's where you get a lot of the real meat of the philosophy of the story. So I really love it for that.
It starts to draw some of those story threads together and make it a little bit more of a cohesive fabric at that point. So because 12 is one of the harder stories to understand for the average person, I would say.
Yeah. The other thing is that you see in a lot of Evil East Alliance games, where you have the politicking story, but then often there's kind of a man behind the man supernatural element, whether it's the Okuria or in Final Fantasy Tactics, you had the Lucavi demons, or you have the power, the dark in the city of Leomond in Vagrant story. You often have that as kind of an unseen manipulator lurking behind that becomes discovered, exposed by the main characters, and who often work to destroy it, often with their efforts not being recognized by the world.
Or in 14,
it's kind of a recurring,
the Asians.
Yeah, it's kind of a recurring theme that you see in a lot of those Evil East settings. So this is really the point where we start hitting that for Final Fantasy XII.
Very good. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and do it for this episode, guys. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like, subscribe, or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever your preferred podcatcher is. And if possible, leave us a rating or review. It helps other people to find our show and lets us know how we're doing. And if you really dig the show, consider subscribing to us here at twitch.tv/PhoenixDownRadio, where you can get access to a number of subscriber-only emotes and badges. And if you would like to support us out on Patreon, like our benevolent overlord Rory Fenrir, or our shadowy foreign investor Tibian Salts, you can go out to patreon.com/PhoenixDownRadio. All proceeds go towards growing the show, cover things like hosting costs, allow us to improve and upgrade the equipment, as well as do some fun stuff, like contests and giveaways. And any kind of support, whether it's likes, emails, tweets, follows, subs, donations, whatever, it's all greatly appreciated. We like interacting with you guys and the rest of the community. If you want to check out our website, where we are working on trying to get some more stories out there, look forward to that in the future. You can go out to PhoenixDownRadio.com. If you have questions, comments, suggestions, or just want to say hi, send us an email, podcast@PhoenixDownRadio.com. Hit us up out on Twitter @PHXDNRadio. And if you happen to miss the live shows and want to see the video version of our podcast, you can go out to youtube.com/PhoenixStarRadio, where we upload the video portion of the show every week as well. Shout outs.
All right, I'll go ahead and give shout outs to some of the fisher folk I've been fishing with and or getting advice from. Shout out to Sophia, who keeps dragging me out to Ilmeg to get Aeoldskan. One of these days we'll get it. One of these days. Cinder Surprise is still not happening anytime soon. Though the last time someone there was a whole bunch of people who gathered for it, and one of them caught it. So it's real. It's real.
You were imagining things.
No, we saw it. We saw it. We saw the note. It's real. It's really there. Also, big shout out to Fruity Snacks @FisherFruity on Twitter, who provides all sorts of wonderful guides for people who are attempting to target these big fish, with recommendations on how to prepare, what bait you want to use, all sorts of various cool special technique stuff that makes it easier to do big fishing. Love your work. Really great stuff.
They call him Seyrr the Fisherman.
Really love how you've been the driving force behind that Eorzean Aquarium, which as soon as data center travel opens up, I am going there and I am taking a visit. And I will buy popcorn and a little hat that has squid on it. I assume that's what one buys at aquariums. You can find me on Twitter @FF14Seyrr. That's FFXIVSEYRR. You can also find me on the Phoenix Down Radio Discord. Library summer camps have been picking up a little bit, so I can't monitor it quite as obsessively as I usually do, but I still love to chat with folks, get occasional questions about lore, discussion. I think, is Nick Nar still doing streaming of Trails? I know he'd been doing that for a while.
Not certain.
Yeah, but yeah, it's usually a fairly chill environment. Love to see you all there. And yeah, how about you, Klaus? Who do you want to give shout outs to this week?
Well, of course, I need to shout out you for sticking around again. For some odd reason, we still continue to do this show every other week. And
collective brain damage.
Well, I mean, we're creeping up on 7 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, that's
so weird.
It is. I thought about that. I was like, 7 years. Wow. But otherwise, shout out to everybody listening out on the podcast, joining us here live at Twitch. just enjoying us in general. People out on the Discord, like I said, that's probably the best place to hang out. I haven't been very active on social media because it's one of those things. So
I mean, also social media is just a garbage fire in general.
Indeed it is. So I like to be able to hang out in a place where everybody knows your name. And but no, the Discord is a great place to find us because it's something that we can just all relax in and without having to worry about the kind of the nastiness out there, and we just kind of enjoy everything that's going on. So stop by there. But I mean, occasionally
it's our respite.
Yes, indeed it is. But if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at PHXDN_KLAUSS. Maybe when it becomes less of a dumpster fire, we'll put some more stuff out there. Occasionally post some interesting things, but we'll see. Well, with the new job, it's a little more difficult for some of that stuff, and it's much easier to kind of monitor the Discord than it is to monitor social media. So yeah. So on behalf of my co-host Seyrr Tomono, I am Klauss Nightbring, wishing everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Phoenix Down Radio is a production of PhoenixDownRadio.com and Illusion Productions. Final Fantasy XIV and Eorzea are trademarks of Square Enix. In-game content for Phoenix Down Radio is the copyright of Square Enix. Opening music for Phoenix Down Radio is provided by Guilty Gear Rock You. Check out the Metal Chocobo theme cover and many other music videos at youtube.com/Guilty Gear Rock You. Closing music for this episode is provided by Guitar Wanker 90. Please check out their full version of Matoya's Cave and other rock video game covers at youtube.com/Guitar Wanker 90. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of Phoenix Down Radio and its hosts and do not reflect the views of Square Enix.